The march began under a violet morning sky, cold enough to sting the skin. A line of exhausted Zareth women moved slowly across the frostbitten plain, their steps heavy, their breaths sharp in the air. They were healers, code clerks, medtech workers, never meant for frontline fighting. Yet here they were, prisoners at the end of a war they never truly touched. Their uniforms were torn, patched, and stiff with dirt, but to them these clothes were the last shield they had. Every story they had ever heard said the same thing: when they reached the human camp, the uniforms would be torn from them. That was what the beasts of soul did. Everyone knew it. Everyone feared it. Selah kept her hands close to her chest, clutching the top of her cracked collar. Each time the cold wind hit her face she squeezed the fabric tighter, afraid it might slip. If it slipped, the humans would see weakness. If they saw weakness, they would take everything. That was what the Dominion broadcasts had told her since childhood. Beside her, Nira walked with stiff steps, her eyes wide and darting. She was the youngest, and the fear showed clear as day on her face. "Don't look at them," she whispered. "Don't ever look at humans in the eyes. It makes them angry." Selah didn't answer. She didn't have the breath to give. And besides, she wasn't sure she wanted to say anything that might make fear real. She focused on the human camp ahead: tall metal frames, soft blue lights, dark shapes of soldiers moving in organized rows. No shouting. No laughing. No sounds that matched the stories. Veshra, the elder healer, walked behind them, her steps slow but steady. "Do not believe the quiet," she muttered. "Humans like to play tricks. That is what the Dominion said. They show calm before they break you." Selah nodded, even though something inside her did not agree. She did not want to trust her own doubt. Doubt was dangerous. Doubt opened doors to hope, and hope made pain worse. A human soldier walked near the line. His visor was down, hiding his face. His weapon pointed to the ground. He did not speak. He did not push anyone. He only walked, matching the pace as if he were guiding lost travelers rather than prisoners. Selah held her breath each time he came close, expecting a strike, a grab, a shout. Nothing came. The group reached the outer fence of the human processing zone. The fence hummed with soft blue light. Nira flinched at the sight. "They will strip us inside," she said, shaking. "This is where it starts." Selah wanted to say she didn't know, but the words stuck in her throat. The human soldiers stepped aside to let them enter. One of them tapped a small floating drone the Zareth had never seen before. It hovered forward, projecting a calm voice in their language. "Stop. Form a line. Do not fear. You are safe." Safe. The word felt wrong. Almost cruel. Who tells prisoners they are safe? The human sergeant stepped forward. He held no weapon. He did not raise his voice. His armor was scratched and worn, but clean. The drone carried his words, smooth and steady. "You will be processed. You will not be harmed. You will not be touched. You will keep your clothing." The Zareth women froze. Every lie they had been fed for years collided with this one simple moment. They stood like statues, unsure if any move might break whatever strange calm they had stepped into. The sergeant looked at them, but not in the way predators look at prey. His gaze seemed to be checking their condition: frostbite, fatigue, wounds. Every human behind him stood silent, focused, calm. No sneers. No smirks. Selah felt her chest tighten. This was wrong. This was nothing like the training vids. Humans were supposed to laugh at fear. They were supposed to shout and push and tear uniforms away. That was what the Dominion had shown over and over. A pair of human medics approached. A woman and a man. They walked slow, hands open and empty. They stopped several steps away to keep space between them and the prisoners. The drone spoke again. "These medics will check your health. They will not touch you unless you give permission. Nira let out a broken sound, a mix of fear and disbelief. Why? Why would they ask permission? We are prisoners. We are enemies. The human medic lowered her helmet shield so they could see her face. She looked tired but gentle. She lifted a small scanner and waited for a nod. When the prisoners only stared, too confused to move, she simply kept still, showing she would not force anything. Sayla's voice came out thin. What trick is this? The medic shook her head and pointed to Sayla's shaking hands. She said something in her own language. The drone translated. You look cold. We can help. Sayla couldn't stop the flinch. The scanner light touched her skin, no pain, no contact, just a soft glow that showed the medics her body temperature and stress levels. They stepped back. They did not force anything. They did not touch anyone. One by one, the Zareth women were scanned. Each time, the humans kept their distance. Each time, the women waited for the moment everything would go dark, sharp, violent. It never came. When the scans were finished, the human sergeant pointed to a nearby tent. It was warm inside, lit with soft lamps and lined with blankets. The drone spoke. You may rest here. Food and water will be brought. Guards will wait outside. They will not enter the tent. The guards outside stood facing away to give privacy. Sayla stepped into the tent on shaking legs. The warmth washed over her like something unreal. The blankets were clean. The smell of heated broth filled the air. The humans placed the items inside, then left without a word, letting the flap fall behind them. No one watched them. No one shouted orders. No one demanded obedience. Veshra sat down hard, her knees sinking into the soft blankets. This is not how humans behave, she whispered. This cannot be real. Nira covered her head with her hands. They are trying to trick us. They must be. Sayla didn't answer. She crouched beside a small bowl of warm broth. She touched it with the tip of her claw. It was real. No strange smell. No bitter taste of drugs. Her hands began to tremble. Not from fear. From confusion. The humans had shown no cruelty. No force. No humiliation. Nothing that matched the warnings she grew up hearing. And that frightened her more than anything. Because now she had no idea what humans truly were. The warmth of the tent should have been comforting, but it only made the confusion worse. Sayla wrapped herself in a thermal blanket, still shivering, though her body was slowly thawing. Around her, the other Zareth women hesitated, unsure whether to eat, sit, or even breathe. Every instinct told them this was a trap. Every fiber of their training screamed, humans were predators. Humans were cruel. Humans stripped prisoners and laughed as they suffered. And yet nothing they saw matched the stories. Nira clutched her knees to her chest, her eyes wide and darting to every corner of the tent. They're waiting outside. They'll come in and take everything, she whispered, voice trembling. It's just a matter of time. Veshra shook her head slowly. No, she said. Something is different. Their silence, it feels deliberate, but not cruel. Too calm. Her voice was almost a question to herself. Sayla sipped at the warm broth. It was thick and nourishing. Her stomach, empty for days, clenched with disbelief. She couldn't understand why someone would give food to an enemy without expecting something in return. She glanced at the medics outside the flap. They had stepped back, giving the women space, waiting, but not forcing anything. There was no aggression, no control. Just patience. The human sergeant returned. He did not shout. He did not demand obedience. He stood quietly, letting the translator drone speak for him. You will be given medical supplies, it said. You may rest while we prepare them. We do not wish to force you. You are safe. Sayla froze. Safe, she repeated under her breath. The word tasted strange, almost bitter. It did not fit with the memories of screams and cold metal and the faces of humans she had imagined all her life. Why? Nira asked aloud. Why give us warmth, food, safety? We are their enemies. We should be. She broke off, swallowing hard. Her voice cracked. We should be dead or. Veshra put a hand on her shoulder. I don't know, she admitted softly. But perhaps we have been lied to. The medics returned with supplies. Thermal packs, nutrient paste, salves for frostbite, and clean blankets. They placed them carefully on the ground, just outside the flap of the tent, respecting the women's space. They did not touch anything unless invited. They did not stare or comment. They simply waited. Sayla watched as one of the medics, a tall man, crouched and held out a tube of salve. For your hands, the drone translated. I can see they are cracked. Healers' hands deserve care. Sayla's throat tightened. Her hands had been raw from days of retreat and tending to the wounded. She had expected ridicule, punishment, or indifference. Instead, this human offered her help as if her work mattered. She hesitated, then slowly took the tube, unsure whether to trust it, or the gesture itself. Nira let out a bitter laugh, sharp and uneven. Healers' hands? What do they care? We are their enemies. Every scar we bear is proof they should hate us. Veshra pressed a hand to Nira's arm, her own voice trembling. Perhaps hate is not the only way to measure strength. Sayla looked from Nira to Veshra, then at the medics standing patiently outside. For the first time, doubt crept into her certainty. Humans, she thought, might be capable of something she had never imagined. Something stronger than fear, stronger than cruelty. The first night in the tent passed slowly. No one entered. No commands were shouted. The women huddled together, sharing blankets, whispering quietly, still afraid to relax. Nira finally slept, curled into herself, though her face was tense and pale. Sayla and Veshra stayed awake, staring into the dim glow of the lamps, thinking of everything they had been told about humans, and seeing it fall apart. Morning brought more confusion. A human officer entered the tent, alone this time, unarmed. He carried a tablet, and when the translator drone activated, his voice spoke calmly. You will be allowed to report any injuries. You will receive care. You will not be forced to remove clothing. You are safe. Sayla swallowed hard. Every word contradicted what she had been taught. Every word struck at the foundation of her fear. She glanced at Veshra. The elder healer's face was pale but composed. She nodded once, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging what Sayla could not yet say aloud. Humans were not what the Dominion had claimed. The officer offered each of them a heated food pack. Again, they waited without pressing, without force, without threat. The act was so ordinary, so mundane, that it became extraordinary to the Zareth women. Why would they care? Nira whispered again, more softly this time. Why would they give us food, warmth, blankets, respect? It doesn't make sense. Sayla considered the question and did not answer. She could not yet understand it. But deep inside she felt the first flicker of something dangerous. Hope. And with hope came fear. Fear that the world they knew was wrong. Fear that everything they had been told to believe about humans, about strength, about war, was a lie. The day moved on with careful routines. The medics checked each woman from a distance, asking questions, offering supplies, giving space. No pressure. No humiliation. Nothing that resembled the stories of horror they had heard all their lives. At one point, Sayla noticed Nira watching the medics with narrowed eyes, her body rigid. They are waiting for something, she muttered. They want to trick us. One mistake and... Perhaps, Veshra said softly, they are waiting for us to see them as they truly are. Not the monsters we imagined. Nira looked at her incredulously. Sayla could not speak. She could only stare at the medics moving outside the flap, performing their work quietly, calmly, humanly. The thought hit her in waves. Humans were not only strong, they chose restraint. They chose care. They chose patience when cruelty would have been easier. By the time the second night fell, the Zareth women had eaten, rested, and begun to shed some of their panic. The blankets warmed them, the broth filled empty stomachs, and the quiet persistence of the humans taught them something their entire lives had denied. Strength was not just in taking, it was in holding back. In choosing mercy. Selah lay back on the blankets, staring at the dim lamps. Her hands still ached, but she had a small tube of salve beside her. For the first time since the march began, she did not flinch when she touched it. She could not yet understand the humans, but she knew one thing: the stories were lies. And the truth, whatever it was far more terrifying, far more powerful, and far more human than she could have imagined. The flicker of hope made her shiver. But this time, it was not fear. It was understanding. And that understanding was dangerous. Because when the enemy you feared most refuses to be cruel, you are left to confront your own weakness, your own assumptions, and the lies you have carried all your life. And Selah, staring at the quiet, patient humans, realized she might never think of enemies the same way again. The next morning, the women awoke to a quiet that was almost unbearable. Not the fear-filled silence of the battlefield, nor the shouted commands of guards. Just calm. The tents outside flapped gently in the wind. The lamps inside glowed softly. The thermal blankets were warm against their cold skin. And the humans did not rush, did not shout, did not force them. Selah sat up, rubbing her eyes. Her hands were cracked, her claws raw from days of retreat, but for the first time she noticed something else. The humans outside were not ignoring her. They were looking at her hands, not with anger, not with disgust, but with concern. A human medic stepped closer, slowly, carefully, and held out a small tube of salve. "For your hands," the translator drone said. "I can see they are injured. You have worked hard." Selah froze. She wanted to snatch it, to run, to scream that she didn't trust them. But curiosity made her reach out. The moment she touched the tube, a wave of disbelief struck her. No trap. No hidden device. Just help. Veshra, sitting beside her, whispered softly, "I never thought I would see the day humans offer care to enemies." Nira laughed bitterly. "Care? We are prisoners. They should be punishing us, torturing us, stripping our uniforms." She curled tighter, trembling. "It is a trick. They are waiting for us to make a mistake." The medic stood patiently, hands empty. No sudden moves. No commands. No words except through the drone. They waited. They offered space. They gave room to breathe. Selah tried to eat a spoonful of the thick nutrient paste. It was warm, filling, and strangely comforting. She kept expecting a sudden shout or a hidden needle, but nothing came. The calm persistence of these humans pressed on her mind like water on stone. Slowly, doubt began to seep in. Maybe, just maybe, the stories were lies. The women were allowed to rest, eat, and tend to their wounds. Nothing was demanded of them. No inspection. No humiliation. No pressure. Selah and the others had been trained to expect cruelty at every turn, yet the humans did the opposite. Every moment of restraint, every small act of care, was an assault on their entire understanding of the world. By midday, a human officer entered. He was unarmed, and his steps were slow, careful. He carried a small data pad. The drone translated. "You may report injuries. You will receive treatment. You will not be forced to remove clothing. We do not wish to harm you. You are safe." Selah felt her stomach twist. The word "safe" again, spoken with such certainty, with no conditions, felt alien. It made her dizzy. She turned to Veshra. who only nodded slowly, as if acknowledging that the world they had known was falling apart. The human medics then brought forward a wounded Zereth soldier from outside. She had been caught on the retreat, frostbitten, exhausted, barely conscious. Selah instinctively stepped forward. The medic held out his hand, and with the translator drone, spoke. "You may assist if you wish. Your skills can help her survive." For a moment, Selah froze. Assist the enemy? Save the life of a soldier from her own side, who had fought for the Dominion. She looked at Veshra. The elder's face was calm, encouraging. Slowly, Selah stepped closer. She touched the Zereth soldier's arm. The human medic guided her gently. "You know how to treat frostbite," he said. "Work with me. We can save her together." The act of trust, of letting an enemy help, shook her. Every instinct, every lesson she had learned, screamed to pull back. And yet, the human's calm patience, his refusal to push, to control, to force, made it possible. Slowly, carefully, Selah worked alongside him. Nira watched from a distance, trembling. "Why would they?" she whispered, voice breaking. "Why would they let us help them?" Veshra put her hand on Nira's shoulder. "Because," she said, voice low, "they are stronger than we imagined. Stronger than fear. Stronger than cruelty." By the afternoon, the wounded soldier's breathing had stabilized. The medics had applied salves, bandages, and warmth. The Zereth women stood back, watching, tears welling in some eyes. They had expected to see pain, humiliation, dominance. Instead, they saw care, patience, honor. Selah's hands ached from holding the patient's arm, but she could not stop. Not because of duty, not because of fear, but because she wanted to. The humans were teaching her something no words could. Strength was not in cruelty. Power was not in breaking others. True strength, she realized, was restraint, patience, and mercy. Nira finally stepped forward. Hesitant, her voice barely above a whisper, she said, You didn't force us. You didn't take from us. You didn't." Her voice caught in her throat. "You are human." The human medic looked at her, calm and steady. "We are," he said simply. "And that is enough." For the first time, Nira did not recoil. For the first time, she did not flinch. The realization hit her like cold water. The stories, the lessons, the warnings, they were lies. Lies designed to make her fear humans. But humans, these humans, were something else entirely. Something stronger, something terrifying in a way the Dominion had never imagined. The evening fell. The tents glowed softly in the dim light. The Zereth women huddled together, sharing blankets, whispering, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Selah sat back against the wall, looking at Nira and Veshra. "We were told," she said quietly, "that humans strip prisoners, that they laugh at our pain, that they enjoy cruelty. But we were wrong." Veshra nodded. "They are not what we were taught to fear. They are better. Stronger. They choose mercy when others would not. That is why they are dangerous. That is why they win." Nira shivered. I don't know what to think anymore. Everything I believed, everything I feared, it was a lie." Selah reached for the small tube of salve. She squeezed a little onto her hands, feeling the warmth of care. For the first time in days, she let herself feel relief. And with that relief came something frightening, understanding. Humans were not monsters. They did not need to force fear to control. They did not need to humiliate to dominate. They were terrifying in their restraint, in their choice to show mercy, in their ability to act with honor even when victory was within reach. The women lay back on the blankets, the warmth seeping into their bones. They were still prisoners, still enemies by law and by circumstance. But the world they had known, the stories, the fear, the lies, was gone. Replaced by a truth far more powerful and far more dangerous. Humans were not cruel. Humans were strong. And that strength, wielded with care, left the Zareth women to confront the most frightening thought of all. The enemy they had feared most was not only capable of kindness, it was built to survive because of it. And that understanding, terrifying as it was, would change everything. The next morning, the Zareth women awoke to another quiet day in the human camp. The cold wind had less bite now, the warmth of the tents and blankets lingered in their bones. They moved slowly, almost cautiously, still unsure if any sudden action might shatter the fragile calm they had begun to trust. Selah stretched her stiff limbs, wincing at her cracked claws. She glanced around at the others. Nira sat huddled in a corner, still trembling, eyes flicking to the flap of the tent every few seconds. Veshra had her hands folded neatly in her lap, her gaze steady, but her jaw was tight. None of them spoke at first. Silence had become a language they were slowly learning to read. Outside, the medics moved with quiet precision. They carried supplies, checked equipment, and occasionally paused to look at the women, always respectful, never pushing. Their discipline was unlike anything the Zareth had imagined. Humans were supposed to be wild, uncontrolled, cruel. Yet here, in the midst of a war, they showed patience, calm, and order. A human officer entered the tent. Selah stiffened immediately. The officer was tall, his armor marked with scratches and dents, but clean. He carried no weapon, only a data pad in one hand. The translator drone activated. "You will be briefed on your rights," it said. "You will receive care and food regularly. No one will touch you without consent. We do not wish to harm you. You are safe." Selah swallowed hard. Again, the word echoed in her mind. Safe. It felt strange, almost impossible. She turned to Veshra, who gave a slight nod, as if saying, "See? It is true." The officer gestured to the medics outside. "You may choose to assist with care or remain at rest. Your participation is not required, but it is welcomed. You may refuse any procedure." The women exchanged glances. Veshra's eyebrows rose in surprise. Nira's lips pressed together, her jaw tight. Even Selah felt her pulse quicken, not from fear, but from the realization that this was real. Humans were offering them choice, respect, and trust. A wounded Zareth soldier was brought in from outside. Her condition was worse than the day before. Frostbite had advanced, her energy almost gone. Selah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She remembered the screams of soldiers dying in the snow, alone, during the retreat. She remembered the stories of humans laughing as the weak fell. But this time, there was none of that. The human medic gestured to Selah. "You may assist," the drone translated. "Your skills are valuable." Selah hesitated. For a moment, old fears pressed down on her chest. Could she trust them? Could she help an enemy without being tricked? But the calm patience in the medic's eyes, the way he waited without forcing, made her move forward. Slowly, carefully, she knelt beside the wounded soldier. Veshra followed, offering what knowledge she could. Even Nira, trembling, stood at the edge, unsure whether to help or step back. The medic guided them gently, explaining each step. He did not hurry. He did not raise his voice. He did not command. He simply offered instruction, guidance, and space. The Zareth women realized, as they worked, that this was something they had never seen in any battlefield or training ground, humans treating enemies not as tools or pawns, but as beings deserving care. Selah's hands ached from working, but she ignored it. Each movement, each careful application of salve and bandages, was met with quiet affirmation from the human medic. No words of superiority, no gestures of dominance, only respect. Nira finally spoke, voice low and broken. Why are you helping us? We are your enemies." The medic looked at her calmly. "Because," the drone translated his words, "strength is not measured by cruelty. Power is not proven through suffering. Humans choose to survive, and we choose to care. The words hit Selah like a hammer. She stopped for a moment, looking at the medic, then at the other women. Could this be true? Could the strength of a being be measured not by what they take, but by what they refuse to do? She realized that every lesson the Dominion had taught her was upside down. By midday, the wounded soldier's breathing had stabilized. The Zareth women stepped back, exhausted and trembling, yet changed. They had seen mercy, discipline, and honor in action. They had touched it, felt it, and been part of it. Selah sank to the ground, leaning against the tent wall. We were told humans destroy everything they touch," she said softly. "They strip uniforms, laugh at suffering, and break spirits. But it's all lies. Lies. Everything was lies." Vesher nodded, her voice quiet but firm. "We were told that strength meant cruelty. But these humans, they are strong because they choose restraint. Because they choose mercy. Because they choose honor." Nira finally approached, her face pale, eyes wide. I don't know what to think. Everything I believed, everything I feared, it was a lie. They are not what we imagined." The officer returned later in the day with more supplies, clean blankets, food packs, and tools for basic care. He stood silently as the women accepted what they needed, again offering nothing more than space and respect. Selah noticed that even the guards outside did not peer in. They maintained distance, giving the prisoners the dignity of privacy. The women had never seen anything like it. They had been trained to believe that fear was the only way to control humans, that domination was their nature. Now, they were realizing that restraint, patience, and honor were far more powerful. The humans could have humiliated them. They could have demanded obedience. They could have shown cruelty and dominance at every step. But they did not. Selah's mind spun. Every act of patience, every refusal to dominate, was a lesson in what real power meant. Strength did not need fear to control. Compassion did not show weakness. Mercy did not signal surrender. The day ended with the women huddled together, blankets wrapped around them, whispering quietly. Nira spoke first, voice trembling but clear. "We were wrong. We were taught to fear. To hate. But maybe fear is not what humans inspire. Maybe it is something else, something stronger." Vesher nodded. "Yes. Stronger than fear. Stronger than cruelty. Stronger than lies. Humans do not need to break you to be strong. They show strength by giving choice, by giving mercy, by refusing to be what the enemy expects." Selah pressed the tube of salve into her cracked hands. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel relief. And with that relief came something more dangerous than fear, understanding. The humans were not monsters. They were stronger than monsters. They were terrifying in a way the Dominion could not comprehend, not because of cruelty, but because of restraint. As the lamps dimmed and the night drew close, the Zareth women lay together in the warmth, hearts still racing, minds still unsteady. They were prisoners. They were enemies. And yet, for the first time, they had begun to see their captors not as beasts, but as something else entirely. Humans who had survived the war not by taking, but by choosing mercy when others would not. The next morning, the camp was quiet in a way that made the Zareth women tense. No shouting. No marching boots. No distant explosions from the battlefields beyond. Only soft winds and the hum of equipment. Selah sat wrapped in her blanket, staring at the flap of the tent. She had slept a little, but not fully. Sleep felt strange in a place where they were not being watched, not being forced, not being threatened. Outside, the human medics moved with their usual calm. They carried supplies, checked equipment, and paused only to offer help if needed. Their discipline was precise, almost surgical. Selah watched them, her mind replaying the days before. Every act of patience, every refusal to dominate, had carved a crack in the foundation of everything she had believed. Veshra sat beside her, hands folded, eyes steady. "They do not need to punish us," she said softly. "They do not need to force obedience. And yet they still survive, still win, still remain human." Neera shivered, curling into herself. "I keep expecting it to end," she whispered. "Any moment they will strike. Any moment the truth will vanish, and the monsters we feared will return." Selah shook her head. "No," she said. I think this is the truth. The Dominion lied. Every story they fed us, every lesson about fear, it was a lie. We have seen it. We have touched it. And it is real." Later that morning, the officer returned with a new group of prisoners, soldiers from other Zareth units, wounded and weak. The medics moved efficiently, checking each one carefully, offering warmth, blankets, food. Selah watched as the new prisoners were treated with the same dignity they had received. She saw fear in their eyes, the same fear she had carried, but there was no cruelty. No mockery. Only care. The officer spoke through the translator drone. "You may assist with care if you wish. Your skills are valuable. No one is required to help, but your participation can save lives." Selah felt a tug in her chest. The same way she had helped the wounded soldier days before, she stepped forward, offering her knowledge. Veshra followed, steady as ever, while Neera lingered at the edge, her hands trembling. The human medic gestured for her to come closer. Slowly, hesitantly she did. Together they worked on the new arrivals. Selah applied salves, bandages, and warmth. Veshra instructed gently. Neera, at first stiff and uncertain, began to assist where she could. The human medics guided them patiently, never raising their voices, never forcing, never punishing. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the women began to change. The fear that had gripped them since capture loosened. The doubt that had crept in during the first days now grew into understanding. Humans were not monsters. Humans were strong. Terrifyingly strong. Not because of violence, but because of restraint, patience, and mercy. At one point, a human soldier offered a coat to Selah, noticing her tattered uniform. She hesitated, instinctively recoiling, ready for mockery or insult. But the soldier only smiled gently and waited. The choice was hers. Trembling, she accepted. The warmth spread through her body, but it was more than physical. It was the weight of respect, the acknowledgement of her humanity. Veshra leaned closer to Selah. "Do you see it now?" she whispered. "This is the strength we feared. This is why humans endure. This is why they win." Selah nodded slowly, her mind struggling to put words to the revelation. Strength was not measured by fear or cruelty. Power was not proven by domination. The humans chose restraint, honor, and care. They had survived wars, conquered enemies, and yet they refused to become what the Dominion had warned them to fear. The day moved on with routine. Food, care, rest. The new prisoners gradually calmed as they witnessed the same patience and dignity. Selah worked tirelessly, her body aching, but her spirits slowly lifting. She noticed Neera assisting without being told, her movements careful but steady. The young woman's eyes were wide, but no longer filled with terror, only disbelief, awe, and a growing sense of respect. By evening, the camp was still. The Zareth women gathered together in their corner, blankets wrapped tight. Selah looked around at them, seeing the change that had occurred in just a few days. Fear had not vanished entirely, but it had lost its power. Confusion had given way to understanding. Shock had softened into respect. Veshra's voice was quiet but firm. "We were taught to hate them, to fear them, to expect cruelty. But we have seen the truth. Humans do not need fear to control. They do not need dominance to command. Their strength lies in choosing mercy, in choosing honor, in choosing humanity when none expects it." Nira's voice was barely audible. I never thought this was possible. To fight and survive, and yet, remain human. To treat enemies with care. To show mercy. That is more terrifying than any weapon. Sayla's hands rested on her knees, still coated in salve from the day's work. She thought of the wounded soldier they had saved together. She thought of the new prisoners, their fears slowly melting in the face of quiet dignity. She thought of the humans outside, disciplined, patient, and calm. And finally she spoke, her voice steady. "The Dominion feared the wrong thing," she said. "They told us to fear humans because of what they might do to us. But it is not what they do that terrifies. It is what they refuse to do. They refuse cruelty. They refuse humiliation. They refuse to break those in their care, even when it would be easier to conquer with fear." Veshra nodded. "They are stronger than monsters. Far stronger. And we have witnessed it." The night settled over the camp. The Zareth women lay together, exhausted but changed. The warmth of the blankets, the quiet glow of the lamps, the distant hum of human equipment, it all carried a new meaning. They were prisoners, yes. But they were also witnesses. Witnesses to something far greater than the Dominion could understand. Sayla closed her eyes and whispered to herself, a truth she could no longer ignore. Humanity is terrifying because it chooses compassion when others would not. It is strong not through cruelty, but through honor. It is powerful not through fear, but through restraint. The realization was frightening, humbling, and beautiful all at once. They had been taught to fear the wrong thing, and now they could see the enemy's true power. For the first time, Sayla understood that humans were not only survivors. They were a force that could reshape the galaxy, not through terror or domination, but through the impossible strength of mercy. And in that moment, the Zareth women knew the war had ended for them not through death, not through victory, but through understanding. They had seen what the Dominion had tried to hide. The greatest weapon of all was humanity itself. And nothing could be stronger.